talked about him then. He's still very young when it comes to his managerial career. What is he, just 38 years old? Different kettle of fish when you're talking about Jose Mourinho. It seems as though he is moving on to his next club, and reports suggest it is going to be Fenerbahçe. It was understood that he recently held talks in Saudi Arabia. However, it is now widely reported that he'll be announced as the new manager of the Turkish Superliga giants Fenerbahçe today. He was dismissed from his position at Roma in January, midway through a disappointing campaign that left the Serie A side 9th in the table. So, Mourinho, so much experience, won so many things in his managerial career, Cass.
Yeah.
Is there still a place for him then?
I hope so.
I mean, seemingly there is. But
I hope so, Nat. He was up there with the very best. You know, he brought something very different to the table with Chelsea. It was based on defensive, counter-attacking. And he's also had exciting teams. I remember when he had Robin and Damien Duff. And then certainly at Real Madrid, he had a very attack-minded team. But I do feel that some ways the game caught up with Jose because he was quite pragmatic and he loved the ability to defend and stop in teams and shutting shop up. He'd done that brilliantly well with his team. I think the laws of the game now, it's really hard to do that because so many teams are adventurous. And then we've also had technology on top. I think it's really hard to manage that way now.
Well, let's get more on this because we're joined by European football expert Kevin Hatchard, who joins us this morning. How are you doing, Kevin?
Yeah, Kevin.
Morning, guys. Very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very, very well, thank you. So, Jose Mourinho to Fenerbahçe, does that make sense to you?
Well, it's something that's been mooted for a while. I mean, he is box office. There's no doubt about that. This will cause a huge stir in Turkey. And what's interesting about this is that there's an election, a presidential election, going on at Fenerbahçe, and Aziz Yildirim, one of the presidential candidates, had stated that if he was to be elected, then Mourinho was going to come, and Ali Koç, who's the incumbent, who wants to stay on, now seems to have stolen a march and has done this deal as well. So there's that element to it in the background as well, and you've got to bear in mind, Fenerbahçe have just put 99 points on the board in the Turkish Super League and didn't win the league. They ended up finishing 3 points behind Galatasaray, so that was a huge blow.
That's got to be the highest ever, isn't it? Anyone losing their job? 99 points with 38 games, Kevin?
And losing less games than the team above them.
It's unbelievable. Ismail Kartal, was gone, didn't manage to win the league with that points total. So they also had a really disappointing exit in the Conference League as well, lost on penalties to the eventual winners, Olympiacos. But this is huge. I mean, Mourinho is still a massive name. And when he left Roma, it was quite a divisive move by the Friedkin family because, there were tears at the training grounds. Fans didn't want him to go. But there's no doubt that he'd started to really lose steam at Roma because he won the Conference League in his first season, got to the Europa League final, but lost on penalties to Sevilla. His behaviour at that final, I think, went down like a lead balloon. I don't think that was a good look at all for him or for Roma. And his final half season just ended up being Mourinho in caricature, really, constantly arguing with refs, constantly getting sent off, or his staff were being sent off. And they were drifting ever further away from qualifying for the Champions League. Now, in the end, Roma did miss out under Daniele De Rossi, but they've been much more proactive and much more attack-minded since Mourinho left. So he's a massive name still, but I think he does have a bit of a point to prove here.
Kevin, I said earlier, and I don't know if you heard me, that I praised Mourinho for the way he managed and coached his sides. Did the laws go against him, or did he not evolve? Because attacking football now is nearly everywhere, and every team that's been successful is got this, whether it's counter-attack or basically being adventurous, seems to be across Europe and every level.
I think there's an element of that. I think he's shown, though, that he can still set a team up. There's no doubt about that. I think you look at the way that Roma were able to win that European trophy and then nearly do it again. That still shows that in cup competitions, he's still absolutely capable of doing that. It's the league, really, where it's been a while since he's been able to compete. And I think that was the feeling with the anti-Mourinho faction at Roma, that he'd had a lot of money spent on that squad, and he wasn't really able to get any kind of momentum. At Fenerbahçe, he'll be expected to challenge for the title and expected to try and win it. It's going to make for a really potent mix, I think, because the Turkish Super League's always full of drama, always full of stories, and then you add Mourinho to that mix, it's going to be certainly quite intriguing. And you've got to remember as well, Fenerbahçe had quite a controversial season. They've been at war with the authorities in Turkey because they felt that they were really hard done to. You might remember they went to Trabzonspor, won that game. The players celebrated on the pitch, and then some fans got onto the pitch and started to attack the players. And Fenerbahçe at one stage threatened to withdraw from the league. There were all kinds of threats and counter threats. So he goes into a Fenerbahçe team that has had a really chaotic rollercoaster season, really.
Just while we've got you on, Kevin, we must talk about the Champions League final coming up tomorrow night, live on talkSPORT. Borussia Dortmund taking on the European giants of Real Madrid. Can you give a case for Dortmund?
You can. If you look at what they've done all the way through their campaign, they've upset the odds, really. Nobody expected them to win the group of death, which they did ahead of Paris, Milan, Newcastle. And they've been close to going out in most of the knockout rounds since. If you look at PSV, they survived some scares. Atletico, they were looked down and out after an hour of the first leg, but found a way to fight back. And Paris hit the woodwork 6 times over 2 legs. So they've used up a few lives, but that builds belief, that kind of run, because you'll think, well, we've managed to do it so far. Why not one more game? So the spine of the team is strong. I love the goalkeeper, Gregor Kobel. I think he's excellent. Hummels and Schlotterbeck have saved their best defensive performances for this competition. Marcel Sabitzer has been in great form. And then you've got a guy, Niklas Füllkrug, who's very old school, centre forward, who can give them a really tough time. I think his battle with Rudiger is going to be great. So they've got the players. They've got guys like Jadon Sancho, who with one moment can suddenly change a game. Real are the heavy favourites, and they should be. But Dortmund are certainly not completely out of it.
Cheers, Kevin. Brilliant as usual.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.